What if famous artists like Van Gogh and Picasso suddenly woke up in the 21st century and started critiquing modern art? Can you imagine the conversation? Van Gogh with his wild, expressive brushstrokes, gazing at a canvas of abstract shapes, neon lights, or installations of random objects and thinking, what in the name of starry night is going on here? Picasso, who revolutionized the art world with cubism and fragmented perspectives, walking through a gallery of hyper-realistic digital art, or dare I say, some of the latest avant-garde creations that push the boundaries of what we consider art. It'd be nothing short of fascinating to see these titans of the past, not just observing but actively engaging with the art of today. Would they be inspired? Confused? Or would they utterly reject everything we've come to call modern art? Let's take a whimsical journey and imagine how these artistic legends would react to the ever-evolving world of contemporary art. First, let's talk about Vincent van Gogh. If he were to wake up today with all of his passion for color, texture, and emotion, what would he make of today's art scene? Van Gogh was all about feeling, capturing the emotional essence of his subjects through vibrant swirls of color and brushstrokes that seemed to pulse with energy. He spent hours painting fields of wheat, cypress trees, and starry skies, each scene alive with a raw intensity that made people feel his inner turmoil and beauty at the same time. But if he walked into a modern gallery, he might be taken aback by how much art has become about concept and minimalism. Where are the emotions? He might ask. He was a man who poured his soul into every painting, and I can only imagine his reaction to something like a blank canvas with a single dot of color in the center. Is this art? He might wonder aloud. There's no struggle here, no soul. It's just there. Van Gogh's critique would probably be harsh on the most minimalist of pieces. He might take a long look at a conceptual installation where someone just throws a bunch of random objects together and calls it art, shaking his head. To him, art was about communicating something deep and personal, something visceral that couldn't be ignored. A pile of crushed cans, stacked with no apparent meaning, would likely leave him frustrated. Where's the texture? He might ask. Where's the spirit of the thing? But on the other hand, I could see him also being intrigued by some of the more expressive, emotional pieces of contemporary art. He might find resonance in modern abstract expressionism, where color and form take precedence over the literal. The idea of an artist using chaotic brushstrokes to express raw emotion in a different way could strike a chord with him. Ah, he might say, this I understand. Still, there would be no shortage of eyebrow-raising moments as he made his way through the modern art world, feeling like he had wandered into a strange land where everything had changed, but nothing felt quite as alive as his own work. Now let's bring in Pablo Picasso, the revolutionary force who broke art into 1,000 pieces and remade it in ways the world had never seen before. Picasso lived a life of constant reinvention. He was a master of cubism, transforming the way people viewed reality with fractured forms and distorted perspectives. He was always pushing the boundaries, constantly evolving and experimenting. But if Picasso woke up today, what would he think of modern art? I can already picture him walking through a contemporary art exhibit, observing the digital media, 3D printed sculptures, and installations that engage with sound or light. Picasso might actually be intrigued by the diversity of approaches and the technological advancements that allow artists to create in ways that he never could. He might find the incorporation of technology into art fascinating, maybe even pushing him to create his own virtual or interactive works. But knowing Picasso's playful irreverence, he might have a few cheeky remarks about some of the more intellectual trends in art today. This is art because it's supposed to mean something, he might quip, eyeing a postmodern piece that relies more on theory and audience interpretation than on any technical skill. But where's the fun? Where's the spontaneity? Picasso was all about breaking rules. He didn't need a fancy explanation for why a woman was represented with 3 eyes, or why her face was in 4 different angles at once. He would probably laugh at the need some modern artists have to justify their work with philosophical explanations. Art, he might say, is about freedom to make something strange and beautiful, not about fitting into a mold. I imagine him feeling somewhat frustrated by how art today sometimes leans too far into concepts and less on pure expression. Picasso was a man who didn't care for convention. He'd look at minimalist works and say, well, I'll give you half a face, knowing he could make a single shape into something deeply meaningful, while others just leave a blank canvas and call it profound. But in his characteristic way, he'd likely find some modern work that truly sparks his imagination, especially pieces that push the boundaries of how we interact with art that becomes more than just a static image but an experience in itself. But perhaps the most interesting aspect of their critiques would come from how they saw the role of the artist today. Both Van Gogh and Picasso came from times when art was largely an individual pursuit, one artist working to express themselves or change how people viewed the world. Today, though, there's a growing trend of collaboration, digital art, and community-driven projects that might make both artists scratch their heads. Van Gogh, who painted alone in his little room, would likely wonder how artists today navigate a world of endless feedback, online critiques, and social media pressure. The idea of an artist having to be marketable or constantly visible might leave him perplexed. Is this what art is now? He might ask, as he scrolls through Instagram feeds filled with polished selfies of artists with their latest work. Picasso, on the other hand, might chuckle, understanding that the game has shifted. Ah, the showmanship, he would probably say, grinning. Picasso was no stranger to attention and media. He loved being the center of the art world, so he might find the modern obsession with fame and branding strangely amusing. He might even embrace the idea of a self-marketing artist, using his own unique style to build an empire of his own. Of course, both artists would likely find their places in the world of modern art. Van Gogh, with his heartfelt connection to color and texture, might feel at home with the more expressive, emotional strands of contemporary art, artists who use raw materials, abstract forms, and unrestrained energy to convey personal feelings. Picasso, ever the rebel, might dive into the world of experimental digital art or interactive installations, seeing these as the next frontier for artistic expression. Both of them were innovators in their own time, after all. But whether they'd love or loathe everything they saw, one thing's for sure. If Van Gogh and Picasso suddenly woke up today, their critiques would be as bold, as thought-provoking, and as uncompromising as their work always was. And perhaps the most interesting part of it all would be how they might inspire us to see art in a completely new way, challenging us to rethink what makes something beautiful, meaningful, and worth experiencing. So what do you think? Would Van Gogh and Picasso be on board with modern art, or would they reject it altogether? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let's keep the conversation going and imagine how some of the greatest minds in history would respond to the art world we live in today.